So Natasha Shotunde, thank you so much for meeting me and for agreeing to be Themis Sheroes of the Month. I am going to ask you 20 questions in an unreasonably short amount of time.
Let's see how we get through them.
Yeah, so let's start things off with a quick check-in. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Today is a Friday, so that's always a good day, even if it's in a pandemic. So yeah, no, I'm feeling great.
Brilliant. And other than this interview, of course, what was the best part of your day today?
Okay, so the best part of my day today was opening a package that I received from Anna Phillip, which is a black female-owned company. And in it included some vases, which I've been so excited about. And I brought them to show you guys. This is one, and then also
Oh my God, I love it.
ponytail, because I love women. And this is another one that I got. So yeah, and I absolutely adore them. Another thing that's been a highlight of today has been lighting one of my candles that I have, and it's from another black female business called Elephant and Bamboo, and their candles smell like absolutely delicious, and I just love sort of lighting them to just bring nice scents into my home. So yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. We're gonna definitely put the links in the description of this video.
And their packaging is stunning as well.
Oh wow, thank you for sharing that.
I honest to God, I don't know these people, and they've not paid me to do this. So I would literally just love plugging like black businesses, especially black female businesses.
That's fantastic. Thank you for telling us that we don't have to like put any advertising kind of writing, but we'll make sure to post them because that sounds like really good advice. So other random question, do you ever get to snooze your alarm?
Yeah, I do all the time. I do all the time. It's one of my favorite features. But then I sort of trick myself with the snooze. So instead of actually snoozing, I will actually physically snooze because I'll wake up and then automatically snooze. But just in case I don't snooze and I just sleep through, I set like 3 alarms. So I'll have like one going off at a time, and then I'll have another one going off 10 minutes later, and another one going off either 5 or 10 minutes after that, which will be the actual time that I need to get up. So I can still do the snooze that I would do, but it doesn't matter if I do or I don't because there are other alarms that are going to wake me up anyway. So.
Let me just say, this is not part of the questions, but I think it's very impressive that you can sleep through alarms.
No, I can. Honestly, it's like I have this crazy alarm it's awful. It's just like nah, nah, nah. It's really horrible and it's really loud and everybody hates it. But that's the only one that's gonna wake me up, so I have to be on.
I mean, you're always gonna have a good night of sleep wherever you are. Sounds really, I guess that's a really good skill to have. So going back to the question, who has inspired you professionally in your professional life, in your personal life?
This is an interesting one actually, because lots of people ask me the question, and I'm just like, who has inspired me? Who actually has? And I think maybe it is, and again, it's going to sound like I'm obsessed, and I am. It's the black women in my life because I grew up in a very like matriarchal sort of family. It was sort of me and my mom, and then there was my nan as well, and like the only sort of man in it was my mom's brother, my uncles. Um, and so I think, yeah, my mum, my nan, and my godmother, and my mum's family friend, who I'd call an aunt as well, they all were inspiring to me.
And can you tell me how they inspired you?
I think they inspired me because they were very, funnily enough, for most of my upbringing, they were single. My mum has been single, like pretty much all of it. So I sort of was able to see like women, black women in particular, being able to stand on their own, to be able to provide for themselves, and in some instances for their children as well. If I look at my nan, for example, who I don't know how she did it because I think I'm too much of a scaredy cat to have been able to do it at the time. But when she was, I think she was maybe in her late teens, early 20s. This was back in Kenya when it was still under British colonial rule. She came to the UK because they offered opportunities to study nursing in the UK for people who were there. So she came, and this was in the 60s, or maybe late 50s. She told me the date the other day. And yeah, she just came on her own, and she was telling me about how, like, you know, everybody in the village, because she literally grew up, she was in the village, like the village, like, you know, long drop toilet village. They sort of all came together and put the money together for the fair, the flight, and it was the first time she ever flew. And she came to live. She went to Liverpool, and yeah, on her own. And I was just like, how did you do that? Like, how did you do that? And then, you know, she had my mum and my uncles, and then they went back day 3, 4 plus my granddad went back to Nigeria, and unfortunately he was killed in an accident when my mum was around 9. So for the rest of that time, my nan's just been a widow, and she's just bringing up 3 children on her own. I just think it's incredible. And now she's just like, she's Nana. She's just this, like, you know, old lady Nana, sweet. I don't know how to do this. Tasha, can you help me? Blah, blah, blah. But, you know, she's really strong. And then even my mum as well, just bringing me up on her own too. And she's a character, but she's a great character. And she's very much the kind of person who, my happiness, I think, is paramount. So I never have any pressure to do anything other than to excel. Obviously, that's why I'm here. But like, I know a lot of women around my age, because I'm 31 now, would have a lot of pressure from their families, like, when are you getting married? When are you going to have children? Blah, blah, blah. My mum's very much like, I don't really care. As long as you're happy. If you want to be single and stay single, that's fine. If you want to get married and have children, then that's fine as well. Although having children is really hard, so I advise against that. But but it's fine. And you know, the same with my aunts. Like, just watching them just being amazing at what they do. And then those 2 particular aunts actually have they live abroad now. So my godmother, she was a senior teacher at a school in Tottenham. And then when her children were adults, she was like, bye. And it's like teaching in international schools around the world. And my aunt, Aunt Carol, she decided that she wanted to say bye to London as well, and went to Italy at first, then came back, and now she's living in Germany. She's been living there for years. So I don't know. I just think they're all just incredible women.
They sound so fierce and just brilliant, and it's so precious, isn't it, to have that kind of family and that support behind you. That's absolutely brilliant.
And it's mad as well, because they're very much like, oh, Natasha, you know, or Tasha, they don't call me Natasha, what you do is amazing, and you know, you must be so like courageous to get up there and stand in court and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just like, well, what about you, man? You guys have done such amazing things. Why do you think I'm able to do this thing? So yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely lovely. I love that. And growing up in such a brilliant family, did you have a different dream job that you wanted to become as a child? Or
I mean, like, no, I didn't really have many options. I've spoken about this before. Like, being in a sort of Nigerian household, it was kind of like, it was just the professions really that I could choose, and I just had a choice of a few. And the idea of sort of choosing what you wanted to become was something that was sort of put into me at an early age. And I initially thought about being a doctor, but then watched Casualty and thought it was just too much responsibility. And then, you know, saw some barristers in EastEnders and decided that that's what I wanted to do. And I've always wanted to do that. Like, I haven't wanted to do anything else. People advise you to have a plan B. I probably should have had a plan B. I had no plan B. Like, I just had a plan A. And I don't know, I think there were 2 things. One thing was said to me on my journey. It was this man who basically just said, like, cream rises, like, to the top, like, that's what happens. And I just thought to myself, yeah. And then at one point I was like, but am I cream? I don't know. I thought I must be. It's going to happen. And obviously that happened. Yeah, and I think the other thing is sort of looking back on my journey. I've been doing a lot of sort of reflecting on those sorts of things during this pandemic. It's just sort of made me realize that, like, if something is meant to be, it will be. And I feel like, you know, I have a belief in God, and if it's meant to happen, he'll clear a path. He'll clear a path, and it will happen. And if it's not meant to happen as well, it won't. So, and you have to sometimes accept that too, which can be quite difficult.
I absolutely love that you could have cited an actor from EastEnders as someone that inspired you to become a barrister. So let's just notice that for a second before moving on to the next question, which is, what is your favorite feature of your journey to the bar?
I think my favorite feature was, so I didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge. I had those aims when I was before my GCSEs, but then I decided to be a bit of a rebel during my GCSE year, which was obviously an oops. And so I went to Reading, which is, you know, a great university. I enjoyed my time there, but I still, because I wanted to be a barrister from like, I don't know, primary school. So it was something that I wanted for a while. And whenever I had these sorts of setbacks, I was just like, it's not going to happen, you know. So I think the point where I really felt like, oh wow, was, I think it was at the end. It must have been during the BPTC. And I was sort of sitting there. I went to this law school called Kaplan, which doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, it was very selective on who got in. You had to do like interviews, mock oral advocacy and written advocacy as well. And none of the other law schools asked to do that. And I got through, so that was great. And so just sort of sitting around in my classes, for which I had like loads of other people who went to Oxbridge who already had pupillage. I think maybe almost half of the students that went there every year already had pupillage. And then just being at the end, it must have been at dinner, I think. I was sitting around looking at everybody and just thought to myself, you know, a lot of people here, they got here with the assistance that they've had in life on things like their parents paying for a private education or them going to grammar schools, because I went to a comprehensive, you know, going through that train of, you know, going to Oxford or Cambridge or whatever, and then sitting here. And I didn't have those things, and I'm sitting in the exact same place, which just goes to show that, like, my mom always told me that I needed to work not twice as hard, because I think that's what the ethnic minority men get, but because I was a woman, she was like, you need to work 4 times as hard because you are Black and you're a woman. So unfortunately, you're going to be at the bottom of the pile. So you're really going to have to bring your A game. So it's the fact that it was like, do you know, I think I actually brought my A game when I'm here, you know, which is quite cool. And then also, like, when I was called to the bar, that was a great moment, because I don't think my mom really understood. She doesn't listen to me. For some reason, she just never believes me when I say things. She needs to hear it from somebody else. So I was called to the bar, and at the time I was called, I had pupillage. And, you know, she was speaking to some great judges, one of which was had retired from the Supreme Court and was sitting in court in Hong Kong or whatever, and she was chatting with them, and, you know, legal celebrities and other people's parents. And they'd always ask, you know, oh, does your daughter have pupillage? And my mom was like, yes. And they were just like, oh my God. You had so many people who were there just like, oh my God, she has pupillage. My son doesn't have pupillage. My daughter doesn't have pupillage. Nobody has pupillage. It's such a big thing. And at the end of the day, my mom was just like, wow, you really did that. I didn't realize how like hard it was to get, even though I said it several million times. So yeah, I think it was moments like that as well. It's just like, yeah, sorry guys. Snooze.
I love that. That's so many moms are really like that. They just have to hear it from someone else to understand that it's like, it's real.
Yeah.
She understood it at the end. So that's really brilliant. And on top of all the work that you're doing, I know that you decided to study for an NLM while practicing at the bar. And that sounds like a lot of work. So can I just ask, why did you decide to do that?
I decided to do that because I really wanted to learn more about international law, and I wanted to learn more about human rights, which is kind of funny because when I was doing my undergrad, I undertook international law module and I hated it. But I don't know, I just got to this point in, I think it was maybe 2016, 2017, where I was just like, do you know, I want to not only continue to work and practice in England and Wales, I also want to put my foot into the international arena. So then that's when I decided to go back to study, and it was absolutely amazing. I did it at UCL. They have this, I don't know if I think they still do, had this scheme where you can either do it full time, you can do it part time, or you can do it like what they call like flexible or modular, where you've got up to 5 years to complete it. So you will take whatever modules you want, but you need to make sure that you take the number that you have to, including your dissertation, or they call it IRE, at the end of the 5 years. And I did it in 3 rather than 5. And I absolutely loved it. I learned so much from it. I think it's enhanced my abilities as an advocate in the practice that I have at the moment. And hopefully it will advance me in what I would like to have in the future as well. So I'd highly recommend it to everybody. I think it's different because when you're studying period, and you're trying to get to a career, it's kind of like, I want to do really well in these modules because I want to get to the career, right? And then you have those moments, if you stumble and you don't do as well as you want to in a module or the whole thing, you just think, oh my God, my career is over before it started. Whereas with this, it was kind of like, I was cushy because I was like, well, you know, I'm still practicing. I have nothing to lose apart from my money. So it's fine. I don't have to, I mean, I got distinction, by the way. I got distinctions in all modules apart from one. But we didn't talk about that one. But I did get like a merit in that, so it's all good. There was no pressure, but then also you're studying. When you go back to study, when you're studying because you really want to learn. And I met I had in my first year, I had this group of friends who were all practitioners, but they were all doing it full time. So it was sort of like maybe doing a career change or whatever. But from like, you know, one was from the UK, but she'd been a solicitor practicing in France. And then another one was at a firm that I actually knew. Another one was from New Zealand. Another one was from Canada. They were all like practicing. There was a woman in my class who was a judge in Korea. Like, you had people who were, it wasn't just me that was coming back to study because we wanted to learn, but there were others as well. And it was really that group that I had as friends who we still keep in touch now. Yeah, they were amazing people, and they sort of made the course for me like particularly amazing. So I would recommend it, honestly. It's the best thing.
That sounds really lovely. And what has been the proudest career moment for you, or career achievement?
It's really tricky to pick one. At first, when I thought about this question, I was like, I don't know if I can pick one. But there's a few. I think I've had lots of cool things that have happened sort of adjacent to the bar. So like, I remember, I think it was 2017, possibly 18. I did my first live news interview with Sky News talking about Charlie Gard. That was like cool, but it was also obviously the case was very sad. But on a personal level, and I got it through someone in my old chambers, so shout out to her. It was scary because when you do these like news appearances, for those of you who don't do them and don't know, they often ask you to do it very last minute. So it was sort of like that afternoon, she was just like, yeah, so they're looking for like 2 people. I'm going to do the 8 o'clock. Do you want to do the 6? I was like, I had plans for this evening. I was going to prep my case for the next day. I had this, that, and the other, and now I have to choose an outfit, and they're going to pick me up in a car, thank God. I'm going to do my face, and I'm going to do my hair, and then I'm going to like think about this case, and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, but I managed to get through it, and people told me that I did really well. I say people told me because I never watched myself. So yeah.
So you didn't actually watch the interview?
No, I've got the recording, and I haven't watched it. Even in the bar course when we had to record, or like advocacy weekends, it's like, that's lovely, I'll do it for you for show, but I'm not going to watch it. And I probably should. I think another moment for me was like in 2018, I was a social mobility advocate, which was like a bar council sort of scheme that's still running. And at the time, I was writing an article that was going in for the Young Bar, along with other people's like accounts, ahead of the annual Bar and Young Bar conference. There's a few questions that they'd asked a few of us, and we were sort of answering them. And it was supposed to go in the Times. And then that evening, the night before, they were like, oh, I'm really sorry to say that it's going to be in the online, but it's not going to be in the print version. But don't worry, the Bar Council is doing something for the print version. And I was just like, oh, do we know what it is? I wonder what it is. And then the next day I woke up and I got a message from this person that was like a friend of a friend that I'd met once on Facebook. And he'd taken a photo of the Times newspaper, the law supplement. And in it is like a massive, color photo. It was the summer of my face. And I was just like, what? I went to bed, I woke up, this happened. And yeah, I think that was the first time that that was not actually, that's a lie. But it was the first time that I was in a newspaper, that's a lie. I was in like the front cover of like a local newspaper when I got my A-level results. And then I was inside like some other newspapers in like the neighboring sort of areas within the same borough. So loads of parents were coming up to me like, congratulations, Natasha, you did amazing. Anyway, but this is national. So this is the first time I'm in a national one. So I ran around, I left my house, and I was like, I have to buy copies. So I went to like plural. So I went to one newsagent and like he had one copy of the Times, and it was my local one. And like, so he's known me since I was like 6 or something. So I was just like, this is me. I stood there. You think it would be quick, like this moment will be quick, because I've planned it in my head. But I had to go through the whole thing. And I need to find my page. And I was like, this is me. Right, I need to find more copies. So I went to another shop, found me again, showed them to the shopkeeper, like, oh my God, is that you? Oh my God. Then went to another shop, found them again, went to Sainsbury's, managed to pick up 3. And then like, I was like, oh, this is me, to the cashier. And someone in the queue behind me was just like, oh, is that you? It was just like, I just had that weird moment. So that was kind of cool. But, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, this is not part of the questions, but can I just ask your mom's reaction to that?
Oh no, she thought it was really cool. She was really cool. She thought me buying like 10 copies was excessive. Like that's all I could get in Tottenham. Okay, I would have bought more if I could have, but people don't seem to read the Times in Tottenham. Who said something about the Times? But anyway, I think maybe the last sort of best sort of careerish moment was setting up the Black Barristers Network with Mavis and Mona Aqua. I think it was very needed. I think meeting her was just one of those moments, because I met her at a urban lawyers conference, like career conference, where we were both helping out. And yeah, and I met some other fantastic Black barristers there too, and some of which are on the committee. And yeah, that was just, it was an incredible moment where we just sort of went from like absolutely nothing and an idea to being like, let's just launch it and see what happens. And we had our soft launch, I think it was February 2019, where we just had some juniors and we had drinks, and it was just like, this is so really this is so nice. And then we had like our big like launch in Middle Temple. Shout out to them for giving us the space. And it was fantastic. It was just like seeing so many like Black barristers in one room. It was amazing. And obviously we did it right. So we got the drinks, which were happily donated by Middle Temple, but we had no food. So we went out to M&S and bought like nibbles and stuff. But prior to that, I'd already pre-planned this. I went to one of my local corner shops back in Tottenham. I don't live there anymore, but in Tottenham, Nigerian owned, picked up the chin chin, obviously, and picked up some plantain crisps and put them on the table. We had to do it right. And it was a fantastic event. And seeing the senior Black barristers as well, because some of them were like seeing other senior Black barristers that they hadn't seen for years. So it was really cool to see them like, oh my God, hi, how are you, blah, blah, blah. It was, yeah, we brought the aunties and uncles to each other. So it was really great.
And I love that in a room from an inn, which usually all of those rooms have a bunch of paintings of old white men on the walls. So having that space taken over by Black solicitors or Black barristers networks, actually, that is absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it was great. It was so cool.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And back to my questions. Do you work on so many amazing cases with complex situations, and I was just really wondering whether you remember the first time that you felt that you were having an impact on people's lives?
I don't know if I can remember the first time. I mean, I think it was a while ago, probably when I was doing some like duty advice work prior to the bar. representing clients in housing possession proceedings. And that was when I was literally helping people not become homeless, which is great. But I think a more recent time, which has really struck me in the last few years, has been domestic abuse cases that I've dealt with where I'm usually representing the victim, and the victim is usually a woman. In fact, well, all of my cases, they've all been women. And in a couple of them, I'll be reading the witness statements prior to going, like the day before the hearing or whatever. And there'd be a description of what is a rape. So, for example, I woke up to him having sex with me, or he wanted to have sex with me. I did not. I said no. I said I did not want to, and then he forced himself on me. So then I'd be in conference with them, and we'd be talking about parts of their witness statement. And I would say, okay, so now we're going to come on to the rape. And then they'd be like, is that what you'd call it? And then I remember the first time that happened. In fact, I remember both times that happened, but the first one was particularly like this is a moment where, you know, I'm telling you that from the facts that you've told me, a man has raped you. And I've obviously made the assumption that that is what you would know rape to be, because I assume that everybody knows what rape is, but you don't. And now I'm putting a label on it. And I know that, you know, it's trauma that you have already, but perhaps me putting the label on it and us putting it on it in the case is going to be particularly traumatizing for you. So obviously in the answer, I was just like, yes, it is. But yeah, I think those were the moments where it was just like, wow. Because, you know, a lot of the times in domestic abuse cases, the abuse it's not one act. And unfortunately, we deal with it in like singular incidents at the moment, which obviously is being discussed in the Court of Appeal, and we're awaiting the judgment. But it's a pattern. It's always a pattern of behavior that's going on for a period of time. To which I guess for women, they sort of don't necessarily recognize that some of the things that are happening to them are things like rape, especially given the fact that I think in society there's lots of focus on stranger rape or date rape. And despite the fact that there was that case, I think in the House of Lords back in 1991, which basically sort of said that, you know, rape in a marriage is rape. Despite that, people still seem to think that like men have control over women's bodies when they're in a relationship with them or when they are married to them, when that is not the case. And like you can't refuse to have sex with someone, or if you do, it's not rape. It's like, I don't know what it is. It's something I didn't like, but it's rape. So I think it told me a lot about society and the fact that we haven't had this conversation enough, and we haven't educated ourselves and each other enough about these things. I mean, I remember reading that case back in, not reading it in 1991, I was like 2, but 1 or 2. But like, I remember reading it in my first year of university, and I was just so frustrated that I was alive at a time when marital rape was not a thing, that people thought that it was acceptable to force themselves on their wives. And it wasn't a crime. It wasn't seen as something that was bad. Like, I remember just being so angry about it. And I wrote this essay because he had a choice in whatever case wanted to write an essay on. I wrote this essay. I was like, nah. It was like my first. I think it was in the first term or something. But yeah, so it's just, I think that struck me that we've not come very far from that. If still to this day, people, and we put a lot on women. So I'm going to put women out of this. Men think that it's acceptable to behave in that way, and it's not right. So yeah, I think that was probably one that sort of struck me, or 2.
It is so it's such a great recognition having a barrister, a professional, putting that label on it. And sure, it can be maybe traumatizing, but also it gives you that recognition and that understanding. And I saw a lot with stalking cases as well. So many people don't understand what stalking is. And so if someone is just is stalking you, but you think, oh, it's just text, or he's just always there for some reason, there is often that not understanding that that is stalking and that is not legal, and you can protect yourself against that type of behavior.
And there's a lot of I think because our society does a lot of victim blaming as well. Because even I've had, in relatively recent times, communications from someone that I did not like, and to my mind, well, in fact, it took my friends to tell me that it was harassment, which, being a barrister that practices domestic abuse, it shouldn't take my friends to tell me it's harassment. But you start to think to yourself, did I lead that person on? Or, maybe if I hadn't spoken to them, then maybe none of this would have happened, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we need to just get out of that, out of blaming, women for the acts of men for when they misbehave.
Absolutely. I wish I could just end like that, but I have so many more questions for you.
So you don't speak to me anymore. Fine.
It was just such a powerful sentence. I wish I could just be like, and that's it. But I have so many. So we just need another sentence like that at the end of this interview, just so you know. Just be prepared. I'm going to continue with my other questions, which so the next one is, what would you say it's the hardest part of being an intersectional woman at the bar, or if you will, within the legal profession, if you want to be a bit more general?
I think in the past, so for me, prior to, meeting other Black barristers and setting up the Black Barristers Network, I think the isolation was probably the hardest part. This career is isolating anyway. I think everybody will tell you that, because you're very much working sort of solo. However, it's particularly isolating being a woman and then also being a Black woman, because you're just around a load of people that are sometimes so horrible and so disrespectful, and other than your family, you don't have anyone in the profession to talk about it, to vent. You don't know how to complain, when someone reaches the level of complaint, which is so vague. You don't even know what serious misconduct actually is, if we're talking about complaints to the BSB, for example, or how complaint mechanisms work within your chambers and things like that. So I think that was really difficult. I felt very alone a lot of the time, including when I was in spaces. In fact, sometimes when you're with people and in spaces, you feel the most alone. When you're amongst loads of people that, don't look like you, think like you, say misogynistic comments in your presence, and borderline racist comments in your presence, sometimes blatantly racist comments in your presence, and you feel like you can't say anything back because there's no one around to back you. I think that was probably the hardest part. I think things for me personally have changed because I do have that support network in, the barrister friends that I have that are Black, and those in particular who are female, because then we can talk about that sort of intersectional experience that we have. But, at the time, sort of coming into the profession, and also before, even doing the BPTC and stuff, that was horrible as well. There was only one other Black person at Kaplan, maybe two. I might have missed one, sorry. It was certainly none of my class. It was hard. It was very, very hard. Very hard. When you have incidents that happen and you just think, oh, why did that person behave towards me in that way? Is it because they don't like me because I'm a woman, or because of the color of my skin? I don't know, but you don't really have anyone to talk to about it. And yeah, no, it's difficult. And just when people make stupid jokes and comments that aren't really funny, I think that was the hardest part. I think now that I have this sort of I know so many incredible women. I know so many incredible Black women through the Black Barristers Network and through other networks that have been set up. I think the problems, and I'm also because I'm older, because I think when I was more junior at the bar, I was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to be at bar, and you hear about the collegiate atmosphere that the bar has, and it does have it, but you also hear about, you know, especially from more senior barristers who were at the bar when everybody had to go into chambers, you know, how social it was, how much you just go for a drink after court and all this, that, and the other. And I think I came into the profession thinking it's going to be like that. I'm going to integrate. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to love it. And I tried to do it. I hate it. But also, I think I tried to do it, and I've just had a series of mainly white people do or say something that I've thought has been either snaky or discriminatory or rude, just being horrible, that I've sort of realized that actually I'm not here to make friends. I have my friends. I've always had my friends. They're still my friends. Like they're my core. I love them to pieces. I'm not here to make friends. If it happens that I, you know, vibe with someone in my chambers, then fantastic, and they may become my friends. But like, I can't spend too much time, my outside time and my social time with at the bar. I need to leave it. I need to get out of it for my own well-being as well. Because sometimes you need, particularly with the kind of cases that we deal with, you kind of need a bit of a reality check, because you start to get desensitized, and then it's kind of like, oh no, actually, that case that I did was really bad. So yeah, I think things have changed for me, because I've realized that I need to sort of separate, and which is great. So now it's more the difficulties of being an intersectional woman at the bar. It's more about things like work allocation and progression. You know, being a bit older now, I'm sort of trying to think about my future trajectory and whether or not that is being or could be being hampered by discrimination, race, and racism, either by staff or by solicitors or by clients or whoever. And I think there isn't a lot of transparency with things like that, or recruitment in certain positions and things like UC and stuff, that I think are probably the worst. I mean, as some people who are watching this may know, of course, there was the BSB report that came out last year on income, which said that Black women, and I believe Bangladeshi women, are the least and the least at the bar out of everybody. And I know some people were really shocked, and I wasn't. Because I wasn't. Of course I knew. Come on. It's like you're telling us what we already. I mean, I'm glad you're saying it, because we felt it. Like, we have felt it. And people before me have felt it. And we've tried to vocalize it, but we haven't had the evidence to back it up. And you guys will not believe it until it's written on paper, and that has happened. So I'm glad that that has happened, that they did that sort of analysis. And they looked at it in an intersectional way, because the bar, it's only until recently that the bar's been looking at things, the BSB and the Bar Council, from an intersectional viewpoint. Before, it was just men, women, BAME. And then people like me were sort of like, okay, so where do I fall in this? And it just skews figures completely. Because, you know, you may have one woman barrister that's earning over $1 million, but like, do we have any women of color that are earning over $1 million? Who knows? Like, we might not, you know. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts. But hopefully, because people have started to look at things from an intersectional perspective, things at the bar will change. The only thing that I'm worried about is culture and attitudes. That, I think that's the hardest thing, you know, trying to change people's views, the sort of stereotypes, the assumptions that they make about us, you know. I think is going to be the most difficult. I think also the difficulty of being an intersectional woman at the bar is the fact that the bar has focused a lot, in my time in it, on women, which has been needed, and has been necessary. But throughout that, me and other Black female barrister friends that I've had have really questioned what kind of woman they are looking at when they are focusing on these things for women. And most of the time, it's white women. It's the elevation of white women, and we feel excluded. So now that we unfortunately had the death of George Floyd, which has made people around the world, and including at the bar, realize that it has a race issue, even though this is a race issue that happened since they started admitting Black people to the bar. I'm hopeful that they won't make the error of focusing on just Black men, and that they think about Black women too. And that they also think about, Black people who have disabilities, for example, etc. All these other sorts of factors. I'm hoping that people, I'm in many of the rooms, so they kind of have to, because I'm going to be there, but telling them to. But I really hope that they do, because I think too often the dominant within a particular characteristic becomes the focus. So I had one barrister say to me last year, I think it was after that report with the that BSB report on the income, he was kind of like, oh, I didn't really realize, hadn't really considered, and he's a Black barrister, hadn't really considered that Black women would have issues. And I'm just like, and then he also was just like, well, I guess childcare and stuff, that really annoys me. Whenever it comes to women's issues at the bar, it's always about our rooms. It's always about childcare. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I do not have any children. I do not have a partner, and I have issues. So let's talk. It really annoys me. That's all they think. That's the only issue that we have. When you have the BSB giving those absolutely disgusting, appalling fines to men at the bar who sexually touch pupils and others like that, and you're trying to tell me that it's just childcare that's the issue at the bar for women. And then that's just women. We're not even talking about race as well. So, yeah. Sorry, I can talk about this for ages.
There's so much coming out of this, and it's so interesting. And I had just these ideas in my brain. Is just kind of the entirety of what a barrister looks like when we're talking about a female barrister. What do we think of? And when you look at these chambers doing 50-50, yeah, maybe they have 50-50, and then they have one Black person or one non-white person. Is that 50-50 really? Is it just one characteristic that you're taking into consideration? Is that enough? And then when you have, I just, in my head, I have that quote of all women are white or Black so men, and some of you are just brave. And that's kind of really what is coming out of this. And it's really, really inspiring. So thank you for that. And after this recording is meant to be really quick, I have so many more questions for you. But maybe that's on another day. To just kind of move on to a more positive note, I also want to ask, what is the best part of being an intersectional woman at the bar?
I think that it's having an understanding and an appreciation of my clients and their hardships. I think, I come from a low income background, single parent, as well as being Black and being a woman. I have an appreciation. And then also, not going through that route that so many people go to get to the bar, going to the comprehension, all that sort of stuff. I have an appreciation for the hardships that people experience. And I think empathy for me is easy for me to give and have, because I get it. I get it a lot, which I think sometimes some barristers may not. However much people don't want to talk about it, but I think some barristers from certain backgrounds, which I've already mentioned, might not have them, and they might see this job, and God, I hope if they feel like this is an attack, then yeah, it is. They may see this job as something that they're doing because they're entitled to do it, and it's all flash, flash, me, I'm going to stand up and do all this, like, you know, I should have been an actor, but instead I'm going to do submissions and all that sort of stuff. When it's like, we're dealing with human beings here. It's actually not about us, unfortunately. And I remember once, I can't remember what it was in, but someone was sort of talking about the structure of a courtroom and how like skewed it is, because you have the judge, and then you have, you know, okay, you have a clerk, whatever. Then you have the barristers, and then like back in the day, you'd have the solicitors behind you, and the clients at the back. When this whole case is about the clients, and they're at the back of the room. So like, yeah, it's not about us at all. And I think it's about us sort of understanding that the lives that people have, the difficulties that they have. And I think being an intersectional woman really helps me to get those and to understand those, you know, in all of the, because I've, you know, I obviously practice in family now, but before I've practiced in so many different areas, including like crime, including extradition, including landlord and tenant, including other civil work, where I've had clients from so many different backgrounds, and I get it. I understand you, and I feel your pain, and I feel the difficulties that you're going through. So, and that helps. I think it helps build their trust. It also means you listen to them as well. I think some of the cases that I've had, like clients who have been the most appreciative, have been the ones where we've lost. And I remember thinking, why is that? Why is that? And I sort of clocked that I listened to them. Like, especially as when you're the barrister, often you're coming in last minute. So it's like, I've just been instructed for the trial. So I'm just coming in for the trial. And it's like, hi, you don't know who I am. I'm really sorry about this lack of, you know, continuity of counsel, but it's me and we're here for trial. And actually, like, in conference, we'll sit and listen as much as I can in the time that we have available. And I think they really appreciate that. So even if we do lose, it's kind of like, yeah, but she gave it her best shot, and she actually listened to what I had to say because I really wanted to speak. So yeah, and I listen because it's like, I know that this is not my day. It's not my time to shine. It's your case, and I want you to feel like you've been heard, and I want you to feel like I'm gonna try my best for you, even in those cases where it's just like, we're gonna lose. But with those ones, it's like, I have to tell you in 10 different ways we're going to lose, but I'm going to do it in the nicest way possible. So, yeah.
I love it. Your job sounds like it's not only just representing them, but it's also listening to them. So it's a barrister, therapist, social worker. You're just throwing a little bit of everything in there.
You know what? Yeah, it can be sometimes, and sometimes it's literally like, I am not qualified for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Especially when I used to do youth court work as well, because I used to represent clients in the youth court, and you just sit there and it's just like, it's the same one again. He's come back from stealing bikes again, and you're just trying to shake him. But you have to remind yourself that, like, you know, I'm not his disciplinarian, I'm his barrister to represent him here today. There are other agencies that are out there to sort of help them with those things. So yeah.
Hopefully to help them with those things. That's true. And so it sounds like your days can be really tiring and stressful. So how, at the end of one of those really long days, you go home, maybe, but how do you release all that stress, frustration, maybe sadness at the end of one of those really long days?
Music. It's always music. I think coming back from court, when we used to go to court in person, so sitting on the train, putting music in my headphones. Now that we're at home, it's Alexa just playing music in different ways. So like, I'll either be listening to music and dancing, listening to music and singing, listening to music and dancing and singing, listening to music, having a glass of wine or prosecco or a cocktail and dancing and singing, or listening to music, singing, washing the dishes or cooking with a glass of wine, prosecco or cocktail. I love music. I adore it. It's just like, what's that ABBA song? Thank You for the Music. Yeah, it makes me want to cry. That's the thing. Lots of people have, like, you know, their sad songs that like make them teary, and they're normally love songs. For me, it's just random songs like that. I'm just like, thank you for the music, the songs I'm singing. Thanks for all the joy they're bringing. Who can live without it? I could keep going, that's a bit sad. But yeah, no, music is incredible. I'm just like, this is such a gift. Such a gift. So yeah, it's definitely music. I can definitely try and zone out and change my mood by just putting on some tunes. Like I'm going to court as well. And I feel like, you know, I'm gonna have to bring my A game. I used to play Little Wayne sometimes. Going into the Royal Courts of Justice one time, I was playing some Afrobeats. That's as I was waiting to go through security, and I just thought to myself, gosh, you know, the people, the architects who sort of like designed this building, and the people who built this building, the people who commissioned this building, probably did not imagine me, like, you know, a little black girl from Tottenham walking in playing Afrobeats, about to go and do a hearing in the High Court or wherever it is. So yeah, music's amazing.
I love that. I love that so much. And talking about going to court, how are you dealing with everything? Kind of how are you coping with everything on Zoom now? And I'm talking work, but also social life and just life in general. How is that going for you?
It's interesting. I mean, sitting in front of a screen during a hearing is it. I think for everybody, we were all surprised at how tiring it actually can be. I think from a personal sort of life and social life aspect, I don't really do that much social on Zoom. And also, I am an introvert, which may surprise some people, but I am an introvert. So I love being social. I love social events. I love parties. I love raving. I love all of that. You know that now, I'm a party girl. Great. But equally, I also I need to decompress afterwards. So I remember there was one time in my old chambers, I might have been a pupil at the time. And we had probably a seminar, and then we were having drinks afterwards. Or maybe it was just a drinks event. Anyway, I left, not leaving. I went out to have a cigarette because I smoked. Said it now, it's on the video. And the chambers director came out, and he was just like, "Are you okay, Natasha?" I was probably sitting on the floor, on the floor on the street. And I was like, "No, I'm fine. It's just there's just so many people. I just need a moment." And I thought, that's fine. I get that. I do that as well. So yeah, like the pandemic has been hard. I live on my own, so it's been sad not being able to see people. Certainly, but I also love my own company. So if I can like avoid, I don't really do that many socials and stuff on Zoom and things like that, unless it's like catching up with a friend. And even then, I think I prefer to have a phone call. Like so whenever it's like forced, it's kind of hard sometimes.
I love that. I'm team outgoing introverts as well. So I absolutely I understand everything you're saying, and I appreciate it. What do you see as the most pressing issue at the bar nowadays?
This is really tricky because I think the bar has so many issues. It still has so many issues. I think one issue that I think we really need to work on is more transparency. And we're sort of getting there, but more on the level of like, you know, the BSB and the Bar Council publishing statistics. I think that's where the transparency is. I think where it really needs to start coming from is Chambers. I think Chambers needs to, and I've been saying this for years, even when I've been sort of involved on committees in Chambers, not my current Chambers, my old Chambers. We need to comply with our obligations with the BSB and monitor the allocation of work, particularly unallocated work. Like, because work allocation and getting good cases can either see someone's career going really well or going really stagnant. It's so important, and we don't really know much about it. Like, as a barrister, if somebody asked me, okay, so how do the clerks allocate cases? I mean, there's two scenarios. One would be if a case comes into Chambers and they're asking for a specific barrister, if the barrister is available, we'll obviously put it in the barrister's diary. But and they're asking for somebody to do this particular hearing, anybody, give me some recommendations. Then what do the clerks do? How do they choose? And who do they choose? If they've got 10 barristers within a similar call bracket, do they offer them all 10, or do they offer them 2 or 3? And if so, why? And I've been in emails, like, I think once one of the clerks before, like years ago, accidentally forwarded me an email chain on a case, about a case, where I could see how it sort of worked, because the solicitor had emailed. So like, solicitor had emailed, and they were like, okay, so we have this person, Natasha, and somebody else, and they chose the other person, who just so happens to be in my current chambers now. And that, I think she ended up being unavailable. So then they were like, Tasha, can you do this? I was like, why am I coming in as like second choice? But yeah, so that's sort of how I found out about that aspect. But like before that, I had no clue. And I think we need to know how they choose those barristers to put forward and why. I think it's very important. But there also needs to be a bit more transparency, or at least more working with the other side of our profession, the solicitors. How do they choose? What barristers to instruct? I am confident that there is discrimination and racism there, but nobody wants to talk about it, and they need to sort it out. There's a problem. And it really does affect our lives and our careers. Now, it can either be discrimination from the solicitor themselves, or the solicitor being the conduit because the client is the one that only wants a white barrister, for example. But I think that's a problem that really needs to be tackled, because, you know, however much, whatever we do, things aren't going to change unless that is tackled. You know, I mentioned the income report. You know, that's not going to change until we tackle things like work allocation. You look at the appalling number of QCs from different demographics. That's not going to change unless we work on work allocation. So, and just transparency and just so many different things, like how people are appointed on things, on panels and things like that. I think there just needs to be a lot more transparency across the board. And not just, and when it's transparency, when you're looking at things, I don't want you to do the whole white and BAME or just women and men. You need to be looking at it from an intersectional perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And similar question, but what do you see as the most pressing issue specifically within family law?
I think domestic abuse and how it's been dealt with, particularly in private children cases. Because at the end of the day, with cases like the one I mentioned earlier, where I was like, we need these facts, got the facts. At the end of it all, she ended up no longer being eligible for legal aid, so I didn't get to continue the case. However, I know that at the end of it all, there would be contact. And it will probably go down the same line of, like, you know, bit of supervised, then it'll go to unsupervised, and there'll be like overnight stays. And we're just going to go through the same trajectory, regardless of whether those facts were found or not. I think domestic abuse is seen in the family courts often as an inconvenience, something that they don't want to tackle. Sometimes you have some you know, switched on judges who are just like, well, it's just what we have to do. But then sometimes you have some judges or magistrates, in fact, probably more often with magistrates, who just see it as an inconvenience. And then you start grading it as well and being like, oh, this isn't serious enough. I mean, I've had cases where, you know, throwing items at mum and child is not serious enough. You know, even if facts are found, they wouldn't get on a domestic abuse perpetrator program because, like, they won't find it serious enough. What? And you just think, oh, so what is the point? What is the point in all of this? You really don't take it seriously. Parental alienation, on the other hand, yeah, oh yeah. And it's just, it's a real problem because some people like to say that the law is neutral. But, and whether it is debatable. I mean, for me, language is important. The fact that it's he, this, that, and the fifth, and every single statute that you have just goes to show that when it was drafted with men in mind. It wasn't drafted with women in mind. We talk about it for ages. I can talk about it in respect of human rights law and how, you know, it's normally talking about public harms or private harms, but you can go into that another day. But okay, let's just take it that, okay, fine, the law is neutral. Okay. But who is it applied? What applies it? It's human beings. And human beings are not neutral. However much people like to be like, oh, this is an objective test. It's not objective. You're coming into it, judge, with your own background, with the things that you've seen, the other cases that you've dealt with, the things in life that you've dealt with, and your gender, and your, you know, economic background, and your race, and this and that and the other, and all the assumptions that you make. We naturally make assumptions. I think it's the way our brain just likes to work so it can work quickly on things. And you're making a determination based on the facts that you've heard, but with all of those things about your own personal life and your characteristics and the cases that you've dealt with in mind as well, even if you don't realize it. So yeah, I mean, so that's going into the question of, do we need intersectional feminism in law, I guess. The answer is yes. But I think, you know, domestic abuse and family law, I think that is an area where there is a particular problem. And some people would say things like, oh, we need more women judges. And I won't disagree with that, save that sometimes women can be just as bad. Yeah. It's a bit like, we Black people, we sometimes say the phrase, not all skin folk are kinfolk, where it's kind of like, not all Black people are like pro-Black people. Think, you know, can be bad or not, that kind of person. But there needs to be a phrase for women, because not all women are for women at all. And then even if you have women who are for women, what kind of women are they for? Another one. So yeah, we need to do some serious overhauls. We need some serious training of our judiciary to deal with things better. We need training of barristers as well, and solicitors too, because I've had incidences where some of the things that people have said about domestic abuse cases have been shocking. Just trying to minimize the abuse, and I'm just like, sorry. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest problems in family law.
So again, so many things coming out, and I'm just thinking, I just read this article by Justice Sotomayor, literally having a go at the reasonable men, which is absolutely brilliant, and how any kind of, in her case, decision is made with her experience in mind and her life. And it's the same for anything. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely cannot see how the law is neutral. And even if it is, life is not neutral. It's definitely not gender neutral. It's definitely not race neutral, and institutions are not, and incidents are not, crimes are not. So it is incredibly interesting. And this is slightly off topic, so you can absolutely not reply to this. But are you hopeful with regard to the bill about domestic abuse, or not really?
I mean, I'm hopeful. This bill, as we all know, has been a very long time coming, and you know, Brexit has delayed it significantly. But and that's been very frustrating that it's been delayed. However, I can sort of see how the time it has given us has meant that, you know, a lot of new things and new amendments have been able to be put into the bill. People have had time to really think about things. I am hopeful that it could be helpful. However, again, like I said at the beginning, the law is the law. It's about how it's applied, and it's human beings that are applying it. You know, it's like, okay, so you make non-fatal strangulation a criminal offence, for example. That's great. You know, is the police actually going to charge someone for that? I'm not saying that they won't, but I'm just saying that there'll be cases where they won't. So, you know, and then, you know, will the CPS then okay that to then go on to be prosecuted? Will it be prosecuted? Will there be a guilty? Do you see what I mean? There's just so many elements. So it's kind of like, we can do the law and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then also bearing in mind, if you're strangling someone, that is an offense anyway. So I don't know why. For me, it's kind of like the problem, the reason why we're putting these things in is because of the attitudes that people have. The fact that they're choosing not to apply the laws that are already there, that can be used to protect women. They're choosing not to. So it's like, okay, so now we have to highlight it by saying this is specifically an offense or that is specifically an offense because they're not doing it. But if they still don't do it. So I'm hopeful, but I think you can't fix everything by just putting in a new statute. Like all the different agencies that are involved in these things need to change. But ultimately, the ultimate thing that should happen, which we are not doing, and it really annoys me, is that we really need to stop these things from happening. So all the time we're talking about, and I'm glad obviously that the government's putting money into, domestic abuse shelters and charities and the other, and I always applaud that. But it's like putting a plaster on a heart that needs surgery. Like, you're not tackling the cause. The cause is men being abusive towards women. Think about why. I think it's patriarchy, which we need. So many things in life would be better if and when patriarchy is dismantled. But we need to tackle the causes of that, and we need to change that. Because if you change that, then you won't need all these statutes that are specifically like specifying specific, things that are particularly damaging towards women because the police aren't prosecuting it. Like they would be prosecuting under whatever other offense there is anyway, because they would actually care about women's lives because there is no patriarchy. And in fact, they wouldn't even have to prosecute it because the men wouldn't be doing it in the first place. So that's really what we should be tackling. Really and truthfully, we really need to tackle that, but we're not going to, because unfortunately we live in a patriarchal society which is governed and controlled by men. So in order to be able to do that, you kind of need the blessing of men to do that. And why would someone give up power? Why would they? So
I'll raise you.
That's what I want to do anyway. I don't know how, but I want to do it. That's my aim.
Like, what do we need to do to fix the bar? Just kick the hierarchy? One is actually hierarchy, isn't it? Because there is an intersectional element to the system of oppression as well. So patriarchy and hierarchy. That's absolutely brilliant. I love that. So you mentioned that the law needs intersectional feminism. Can you tell me why?
I think the law needs intersectional feminism because I think it needs to recognize the different experiences that people have because of assumptions that people make about their the characteristics that they have about them. I think it happens in so many different ways. I think marginalized people who are marginalized for different reasons, they have the double whammy of being marginalized because of the different characteristics that they have. One thing that I find very frustrating is in places that I sit, panels or whatever it is else that I'm talking at, I'm often the only Black face and, either one of two or three women of color, I think minorities. And nobody thinks about looking at the specific experiences that, marginalized women, for example, have in places. And I'm always the one that has to flag that. And everyone's like, yeah. It's like, why did you think about it in the first place? Do you know what I mean? It just really frustrates me where the fact that people often think about things from their own sort of perspective, but they never think about other people's perspective. So like take family law, for example. I talk about domestic abuse. I talk about things that are horrible that are experienced by mainly women and women of many different backgrounds, ethnicities, etc. But we also need to look at the particular difficulties that, minoritized women experience within the family court system, within the justice system generally. And from the beginning, access, for example, before they even got there, can be quite difficult. There's a lack of understanding in the public generally, but perhaps in these communities even more about the courts and how it can assist. And then if you've got, women from particular groups who are less likely to earn enough money to be able to pay for legal representation, then how are they going to access the courts, especially when legal aid has been stripped in so many different types of cases? And then you've got to think about how they are when they are in proceedings, and how their barristers and solicitors may treat them. Nobody asked that question. I think that's something that needs to be asked by these clients. How the court system treats them and how judges treat them as well, and the assumptions that they make about them based on the characteristics that they have. I think are things that really needs to be considered. Because, and that's in the justice system for an individual bringing proceedings. Then even stepping out on it, like in a wider sort of facet in terms of like law and society and protection and things, like I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking that me as a Black woman, I'm less protected than other women, particularly white women in this country. The likelihood of police not only coming to assist me, but then taking my case and charging someone and going through all of that is slimmer than if I was a white woman. And it's very sad. I think that's another place where, intersectional feminism could have a role to play there.
Absolutely.
Like who is actually getting protection by the state and who isn't, and who is being discriminated against by the state as well, and who isn't. I think it's a problem. And I mean, we can take it to society generally. You pull it out and just be like, look at, deprived areas and the fact that the life expectancy is so low. And then you actually, if you live in those deprived areas, the services that you receive in respect of like the NHS and stuff are far worse than they are in other places. Like I look back at when I was in Tottenham and the services that I would receive there, and then I've moved to where I've moved now, which is a middle class area, and it's so much better. Like, oh my God, you guys are so nice. This doctor's actually listening to what I'm saying. Oh my God. Yeah, completely different. And yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. You look at the pregnant women mortality rates, and Black women, was it 4 times more likely to die?
Yeah.
It's things like that where you need that sort of intersectional sort of viewpoint on things to be able to see that there are particular problems that particular marginalized groups experience. And I think it's definitely something that can be applied to the bar, certainly. Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, the pregnancy case, that's literally what I was thinking. When it goes back to the education point that we were making before, right? Because if the entire system is built and we're educated on a handbook that is by men, for men, by white people, for white people, how can a doctor or police officer recognize bruises on skin that is not white, for instance?
Yep.
And understand that different bodies react in different ways, or different people react in different ways, and you still have to recognize that and take that for what it is, which is gender abuse, domestic abuse, issues within a pregnancy. And there are so many cases in domestic violence as well of women, Black women, being strong and big and being able to fight off like assault.
That was one thing I wanted to mention, actually, is the assumptions that people make about domestic abuse victims, and a lot of women have spoken about it, particularly white women, about how they always expect us, the victim, to be to appear to be weak and meek and sweet and teary and this, that, and the other. And you've had a lot of white women saying that is problematic. Well, I hope that they're also thinking about the assumptions that are made about Black women and how strong we are, and how that can lead the courts to think there's no way that she was abused. She couldn't be abused. Come on, she probably abused him. And yeah, that's an example of, I think, of a problem that we have within our system, and that is why intersectional feminism needs to be considered. And then also, just looking at how the law is applied as well, and whether we have access and things like that. I mean, definitely read some Kimberly Crenshaw. I read her during my master's, actually, because I did one of the courses I did was gender law in the state, and before I picked it, I spoke to my friend who'd done it, and I said, so I'm thinking of doing it, what do you think? And she was just like, well, in terms of like my work, it was fine, but in terms of my life, it's the one module that has like impacted my life the most. And I took it, obviously, and yeah, like obviously it's impacted my work as well, because we were talking about things like family law, we were speaking about things like honor-based abuse, we were speaking about things like gendered harms in conflict, and international humanitarian law and things like that. So we spoke about lots of things, but obviously we started with the foundational principles of feminism and stuff. So I ended up having to read, not having to read, but also reading in my own time, like the fabulous McKinnon, which I'd read at my undergrad, obviously, and she's just like, some of her, it's just the quotes and the sound bites, it's just fantastic. I have Are Women Human in my bedroom, actually, which I need to continue reading. But it's just, you pick up what she's reading, it's like, especially I think one of her essays where she's talking about which I think is Whether Are Women Human, which is the title of the book, because it's a collection of her speeches, I think, where she talks about international law, I think, or human rights law, or both, and about us being like subhuman and non-human, because like it wasn't written for us, so clearly they must think that we're not human. So yeah, and it's just this stuff that just hits you, just, oh my god, she's so right. Life's so sad. So we're just going on a bit of a tangent there with it, but yes, it's definitely needed, because the way people try and turn around and say that everything is universal and it applies to everybody is not true, because it's not being applied to everybody, and it's not being applied to everybody in an equal way. I mean, it's just not. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. And it leads me to my next question, because we're talking about books. And my next question is, do you have a favorite? It doesn't have to be, I hate when people ask me for my favorite book and things, because I don't have one, but it can be a really good one that you've read lately. So a favorite song, a favorite book, a favorite movie that you would like to plug.
Do you know what? Yeah, I don't actually have a favorite book. I mean, I would recommend that people obviously read like McKinnon, obviously. I'm not saying I agree with everything that she says, by the way, but I think she's just fantastic. Simone de Beauvoir, all the rest of the greats. In terms of, and Kimberly Crenshaw, I mentioned it before already. In terms of songs, okay, this is we're sort of getting off law completely, perhaps, but like, as I mentioned before, there are songs that make people teary, and they're usually love songs. That's not for me. We've mentioned ABBA already. Thank you for the music. I haven't actually played ABBA in this house on Alexa, actually. Maybe I did tonight. But One Moment in Time by Whitney Houston is one of those songs that, like, it really gets to me. And I think, I mean, she says, what, give me one moment in time where I'm more than I thought I would be, when all of my dreams are a heartbeat away and the answers are all up to me. And it really gets to me, like, it really does, like, sort of like career and life sort of songs. I'm just like, will I ever have that one moment in time? I'm chasing it and I don't know if I'm going to get it, and I'm worried that I may have already had it. So it makes me really teary. Another one is That's What Friends Are For by like Dionne Warwick and Stevie Wonder and Elton John. And in fact, all Friends songs will get me crying. Like I said, lots of people, it's love songs. And I'm just like, he broke my heart. Idiot. Moving on. But like friend songs, they really get to me because I think you have friends, and when you're younger, you kind of have friends, then you don't have some friends, and you start new friendships or whatever. But as I'm older, I've sort of really recognized the value of having friends and how, how important they are to have that shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
To cry on, that person to speak to in good times and in bad times.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we all know that some people are fair weather friends who are with you when it's good times, and when it's bad times, they're nowhere to be seen. So when you have those friends that are there through thick and thin, regardless, like that love that you have, like nobody talks about that love, and I think it's this loveliest love because
Mm-hmm.
we always talk about love of like partners and things, but sorry, but partners, that relationship might end. Your marriage might end, but who will still be there? It'll be your friends. You'll be leaning on them, and that's why it just makes me feel really,
Mm-hmm. There is an entire TED talk about how female friendships actually make your life longer. So you're not far away from the truth on that one.
Yeah, I believe that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that 100%. They keep me alive.
I love that. Do you have a playlist with all of your favorite songs that you just get home after a really long day, you just put it on and
No, and I should do that because sometimes like trying to decide on what to play when I'm cooking can be quite a struggle.
Okay.
And then it like pauses me, and I'm just like, no, you have to think of what mood you're in. What mood are you in? Are you in a dancing mood? Are you in a slow jams singing away mood?
Mm-hmm.
Are you in a slow jams from back in the day mood? That's often on Saturdays for some reason, but like daytime for some reason. It's just like 112 and next and stuff. So no, I should do really.
You can do moods playlist. That's what I have, like a happy mood playlist, and oh god, I'm so sad, I'm feeling miserable, and I need to wallow playlist. So yeah, that's a task for you. Yes. Coming up soon. Yeah. And my final question for tonight, because I have so many more questions for you at some other point, but my final question is, what would you like Themis to focus on, to work on? And it can be a new project, a specific topic, a type of event, it can be anything.
I think one thing that would be good to do is, bringing women together from different backgrounds and just giving us the space to sort of understand each other's sort of backgrounds and pasts and things, and to build a bond and to back each other. Mm-hmm. I think would be really good. Yeah, because like I've said before, the thing about the bar is that it's very isolating. So you have a little bubble of your chambers, and then you're in it for a bit, and then you might meet some other people along the way and get friends outside of your chambers who are also barristers. But like, it's still kind of like close knit, whereas there are so many. And then also because the dominant is the non-intersectional, shall we say, the white man or whatever. Mm-hmm. You have lots of the dominant where you are, and then you won't have many sort of women or intersectional women in particular around you. So having a space to bring us all together so that we can just like offload, share, understand from each other's experiences, and just make sure that we back each other with things would be really good. I really want to see some proper solidarity and some sisterhood across the different, races and other demographics as well, because sometimes it can be quite insular with certain things, which is necessary in some instances. Like, of course, we set up the Black Barristers Network because us Black barristers are so few and far between, and we're dotted about everywhere, and we wanted to come together, and we wanted to sort of like, uplift each other, and I think it's needed. But I think Themis has a good opportunity to sort of bring different intersectional barristers together so that we can all sort of like, create bonds and things. So.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. thank you for sticking with me, for answering all my questions, and again for agreeing to be our Shero of the month.
Thank you for having me as the Shero. Like, it's so sweet. No one's ever called me a Shero before. No one's called me a Shero. No one's called me a hero. No one said I'm pretty. That's a lie.
I'm not going to believe that. And I mean, it wasn't even a question. I think I said, oh, we should start this. And everyone was like, Natasha. So there was never a question. You were always going to be our first. And yeah, we're really looking forward to reading your article as well that will be coming out on our blog. So thank you again.
Thank you. And before I finish, actually, I just feel because I keep touching my necklace and people might wonder where that's from. Yes, on the Black business. I'll get you to put the link in the chat underneath. They're actually really sustainable. They have their jewelry made in Kenya, and they actually pay the Kenyans, and I'm also Kenyan, like a proper fee to do it. And my earrings too, and it's great.
Send the link, absolutely.
It's called Yala.
We'll post all the links with the video. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Natasha. I'm just gonna stop recording now.